I remember when I bought my first SSD all those years ago. I splurged and spent as much money as I could justify, and I bought a 120 gigabyte OCZ Vertex 2 SSD. It wasn't these thin 1.8 millimeter thick drives, it was a full 2.5 millimeter thick, 2.5 inch drive. And boy, was I happy. 500 megabyte read-write speeds, who wouldn't go nuts? Especially in like, what was it, 2010, 2011, somewhere in there? Amazing, blew my mind. And then the 1.8 millimeter thick, 2.5 inch drives came out. They were pricier, but they made it into laptops. Laptops still didn't justify the space until then. And they only made it into the Ultrabooks because they were the super thin version. You couldn't get a rotational drive that thin. And now, fast forward a few years, and the M.2 form factor made its appearance. And even though it was still operating at SATA speeds, it was amazing. In the size of a gum stick, a juicy fruit gum stick, you could have 128 gigabytes, 256 gigabytes, 512 gigabytes. Absolutely amazing. And then Nvme, the speeds it offered, over a gigabyte write a second. Who knew? I mean, evolutionary it must have been. And fast forward a little longer, and you got Nvme revisions, and suddenly we're reading and writing over 2 gigabytes, over 2.5 gigabytes, over 3 gigabytes a second. You didn't even have a network speed that could keep up with that. So, fast forward to 2019. The Nvme SSD has not only been pervasive and saturated the market, but 2019 is when it became affordable. And you could pick up a 1 terabyte Nvme drive for pennies relative to what they were years ago. In fact, you'd even consider going to the 2 terabyte drive in the $300 price range, because $300, 2 terabytes, I'm reading and writing over 3 gigabytes a second. It's kind of a no-brainer. And that brings us to Seagate's FireCuda 510 Nvme SSD. We're going to be taking a look at it in just a few secs. So today we're going to be looking at the FireCuda 510 from Seagate, the 1 terabyte version specifically. I mean, what makes it so special, right? It's an Nvme SSD like all others. Well, price really. Price is what makes this one special. For $200 US, 260 Canadian, you can pick up the 1 terabyte version. For double that, and you get the 2 terabyte version. It's pretty straightforward. But what makes it really special is for those price points, you can get 3.45 gigabyte read speeds and 3.2 gigabyte a second write speeds. Not too shabby if you ask me. Of course, being the FireCuda brand, it means it's targeted at gamers, and it doesn't disappoint. I mean, Seagate is very specific about where they target their SSDs and their branding and everything, so they've done a great job. It's worth noting that the FireCuda 510 has been augmented with the FireCuda 520, which is PCI Express 4. So even faster speeds. Only AMD gamers can use that right now, so the 510 is still very relevant for all of us Intel users. I'm not going to get bogged down too much in the specs. The pieces you care about are the 3450 megabytes a second read, the 3200 megabytes a second write. The IOPS, the sweet spot, is at the 1 terabyte size. I can tell you right away, 620,000 random read and 600,000 random write. That drops a bit to 485,000 read and 600,000 write when you go up to 2 terabytes, and it drops down to 420,000 read and 600,000 write when you go to the 500 gig. We've talked price points, 650 terabytes write cycle on the 500 gig, 1300 on the 1 terabyte, and 2600 on the 2 terabyte. Scales linear. Other than that, there's really not much more that you need to know, but if you want to know more in a more detailed spec sheet, you can check out the review on Bytesector.com. So how does it perform? Of course, this is all we care about, right? First up, SciSoft benchmarks. The drive scores. As you can see, the 960 Pro from Samsung is blown out of the water by the gaming SSDs. Unfortunately, the FireCuda 510 comes in a bit short of its Western Digital competitor. Next up, Crystal Disk Mark 6, sequential speeds. After an average 5 runs of 1 GB, we find that the sequential write speeds blow the SN750 out of the water, boasting almost 300 megabytes a second faster speeds, while the sequential reads fall maybe a touch short. Respectable though. The Crystal Disk Mark 6 random 4K IOPS. So, 600,000 IOPS, right? After running this benchmark every which way we could, we landed back at our standard run. Giving us an average here again, we see the random 4K writes come in well below the claims at 423,000, while the random 4K reads fall even shorter at 373,000. That said, even the SN750 fell short in our test bench, so I'm not too concerned. This could be a test bench specific issue, and we don't have a second system to test in. Apologies there. Both drives went through extensive testing on the X299 platform to ensure we got the best possible numbers though. Our raw file copy test is a big one, copying a nearly 70 gigabyte file from one SSD to another. As you can see, our peak read speed, averaged over 5 runs again, fell just shy of the competition at 1730 megabytes a second. Nowhere close to the claimed speeds. The transfer time also spoke to the lower sustained copy speeds, as it took almost 18 seconds more than the competition. Last up are the game load times, which is what this SSD is targeted at anyways. This is what the FireCuda is all about, a game storage drive. Again, lower is better, and in our real-world game load tests, we found the 510 to be significantly faster in loading our game titles. In all game titles, it was great. In our benchmarks, it loaded about 1 to 1.5 seconds faster than the next fastest drive, which is saying something. It leads me to believe that the burst speed might not be as high as the SN750 from Western Digital, but it lasts a little longer, enabling it to be faster on the game load times while failing us on the sustained file copies. So where does that leave us? Seagate fought hard to bring the 510 to market after announcing it at CES. It took until June 2019, 6 whole months for them to bring it to market, while Western Digital beat them to market with the SN750. The 510 failed to top its competitors in all synthetic benchmarks except for the Crystal Disk Mark sequential write speed tests, and the claimed speeds and IOPS are not where I expect them to be. All that said, real-world testing, loading games, the 510 actually does its intended purpose. It loads games faster than any other drive we've tested. Seagate didn't come out and claim the fastest drive ever made or the fastest, anything. They came out and said, this is a game loading drive and we want to be the fastest at that. And they are. It's a FireCuda, and through, it lives up to the FireCuda name. Pricing, you ask? Just as you would expect, competitive. A 1 terabyte FireCuda 510 will set you back $200 US, 260 Canadian. The 2 terabyte will set you back 400 US or 500 Canadian. So there's a slight savings going to 2 terabytes. It's not exactly double the price of the 1 terabyte. Overall, the FireCuda 510 is a great game library storage SSD. I wouldn't recommend it as your primary SSD for OS storage, but it isn't a poor performer by any measure, so don't get me wrong there. I just think there are better SSDs for your Windows or Linux install. Just like the FireCuda 510 is a better option for your game library than some of those other general purpose SSDs. And that's my conclusion. Thanks for watching today's video. If you didn't like it, you know what to do. Give us a thumbs down. Leave us a comment below letting us know what we can improve for next time. But if you did like it, give us a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the bell beside it so that you get notified the next time we post a video. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Have a great day, and we'll see you all next time.